Good afternoon. Well, my name is Andy Lloyd. I am head of media here at the Student Motorsport competition. We're here at a very sunny Croft circuit in North Yorkshire in July of 2026. I'm joined this afternoon by Student Motorsport founder and series organiser JP Latham. And JP, we're here to think ahead, to think towards 2027 and to talk through the planning and entering process for any educational institution considering entering the Student Motorsport competition next year.
Yeah.
So my first question to you is, if a college or a university or a student-led team is looking to be on the grid in April 2027, how would you suggest that they start planning from now?
I think timing, as you've mentioned there right at the start, thank you for that, is crucial really here. Is that there's quite a long process, quite a few milestones, or if you like, hurdles to get over, depending on your institution and how you're set up, to get through and things to achieve on a more positive way of saying it. There's quite a lot to achieve with this competition, so crucially, now is the time, as you said, to get in touch. The way that people achieve that is through word of mouth, and initially we hear from colleges, our new teams wishing to start via our website and certainly on social media. But as you've said correctly, is these largely institutions that are in education that work with us are planning for their next academic years, and that aligns perfectly with Student Motorsport. As we're finishing or continuing through this season, we are indeed planning for next year, and the process is communication, is to get in touch with Student Motorsport and myself. I deal with the, if you like, the sales and the registrations and the initial training of teams, and that starts really with a clear, and I mean clear, understanding of what the commitment is to get involved in this competition. There's lots of things to think about with that. Not just the time in which that you're going to be committed to this process, but the amount of people that might need to be involved, the skills, the equipment, and of course the funding.
So would you suggest that if you've decided now that you want to be on the grid, that really the project plan effectively starts today in terms of how you start bringing those elements together to race next year?
Yeah, I think if when we look back at Student Motorsport in our initial year, our inaugural years, certainly 22 and 3, I was perhaps guilty of always starting this process a bit late, but there's nothing guilty about that. Those things take time to develop, but as we've matured through this process, we've realised that actually now, July, when arguably the colleges are closing down, they never fully close down. There's always tutors that are in during the off season, if you like, or the summer period, in which they are planning for next year. So those crucial times is about lesson planning, about personnel, and crucially about funding. So when they come to us at this particular time, it is right that yes, they should be planning now. Now, I don't mean putting in the actual nuts and bolts and finer elements of how this is going to work in April, but really what sort of funding is required to do this, what level of commitment that I've alluded to earlier, and just how much time and effort goes into getting involved in this competition. This is what we would say is really your program in Student Motorsport certainly starts in September and runs right through, as you know, till October the following year. So I've always sort of captured and stamped it as a 13-month program. So yeah, you are correct saying that actually, whilst we're not signing contracts, we're not invoicing teams, we're not saying who's doing what on a team, we're not deciding how many cars are being involved, or are you going to race all year, or is it going to be the next year? But you certainly need to be looking at, if you are going to join this and have a car on track in April, that actually the starting point is probably at the end of August, when you know the budgets are coming in, you know where you want to allocate funds, you know what staff you've got, and crucially, you know what level or amount of students you've got coming into this, in which to to benefit from the program.
Okay. You've seen many teams prepare for the student motorsport competition. What are the common obstacles or speed bumps that new teams typically encounter? And what advice would you give them in terms of preparing for that?
Yeah, I think we've said obstacles, and we don't mean that by any means in a negative way, but let's be clear, let's be transparent, open and honest about, and I say this, and this is not just to dissuade or persuade, or indeed put people off this. There is a huge level of commitment involved in this. Whether it's funding, whether it's staffing, whether it's logistics, whether it's student buy-in, there is a huge commitment involved. Now, in terms of hurdles, if we like to put it, or obstacles, I think one of the obvious ones is, have you got the staff that are committed to doing this? You know, we can build a car in September and October and November, December, but have we got staff that are prepared to, for the majority, go to 7 race weekends throughout the season, which starts in April? And you and I know that actually Easter sometimes falls into that, and certainly the summer period we have 2 races that land. But I suppose that's, whilst it's an obstacle, it is a reality that actually, we're open and honest, the academic calendar doesn't always sit with motorsport. So number one would be, have you got the staff and certainly students that are going to be committed to going to those races? And we've seen it, we don't really want to be seeing teams missing 1 or 2 events. We have teams here at Croft missing, and they're missing 3 races, aren't they? So number one, top of the shop, would be the commitment and time from staff. We've seen teams that perhaps have committed to this, and on occasion a staff member has been ill or can't attend an event, and that's the difference between a team turning up to the track or not. You know, they may be a minibus driver, they might need to have 2 staff from safeguarding points of view, and we've seen teams not be able to come. And you know the knock-on effects of that, the financial implications, the sponsorship, the student involvement, and of course the points. So number one, I would caution on is that if you are going to come into this, remember that you need 2 or 3 staff members at least involved in this, and there is a commitment in the off-season and in the academic calendar in holidays. Equal to that, I would say there's no shying away that there is quite a large financial commitments involved in this. Certainly in year one, motor racing, as you know, it's not a cheap sport. It's a nice to have, but it yields wonderful results, and this is particularly why we do what we do. You know, and we do see teams coming into this and not sort of considering the wider elements of what might be involved, such as you build a race car, but consider having spares. You come to race weekends, but consider the logistical costs. So there are what I call 5 areas of costs involved in this, and the information is readily available, and we can provide that to anyone that's watching this today. Of course, we've talked about the logistical aspects of the competition and the time commitments, and we'll not go to the nth degree about those. We can talk to people in more detail as they come to us, but the purpose, of course, of this video is the main things that we've come across in the last 5 or 6 years, and I can't believe we're saying 6 years. But of course, costing, we have to look at the costs involved in this, and I was always quite shy to talk about the costs involved in going motor racing or running a company like this. You know, it's one of my working points, but costs involved really are something that you need to think about right away. When a racing driver wants to race for a team, of course they're going to say, well, have you got the money? And then can you commit to it? Those 2 things lie hand in hand. So, you know, there are cost areas involved in this. There are 5 areas. Of course, there's a student motorsport entry, and we see that starting at £5,000 for a single car entry. And that's for everything that we encapsulate in our programs, and those are going to be made available to the people watching this as well. There is the cost of building a racing car. Now, realistically, I would say you're looking at £6,000 to £8,000 to build a racing car. Now, some people say, well, the build kit's £5,800 or thereabouts. Well, actually, I would like to come to the circuit with an extra set of wheels, some brake pads, a data acquisition system. So I would really account for, if you're going to teach around this, you're going to analyse and you're going to get the most out of a racing season, even in year one, is that you're prepared to be able to do data analysis and have a spare wheel. Let's finish races, let's teach the students about preparation. There are costs involved from the BRSCC, such as memberships, but those are included in the package. But effectively, there's a £500 worth of BRSCC memberships and race registration for CityCar Cup, but those are costs that are involved in this. We go there into the cost areas such as the race fees for the weekend, but those those costs are passed on to the drivers. But there is a cost of around £4,000 to go racing on a 7-weekend basis, and of course then there's licensing, and these are the 5 main costs that we talk about that's attached to this program. In order to go motor racing, you have to have what's known as a team entrant license, of which thankfully is £395, you know. But there is a cost involved in that, and those are the main 5 areas. But when I talk about year one in this competition, you really need the extra spares for the car. You need to consider the logistical costs of going racing. You need to think about things like paint jobs and wraps on cars. So actually, you know, you could be looking at £15,000 to £20,000 in year one, but it will yield wonderful results. So cost has to be considered right away. Can you commit to investing that amount of money into this program? And we can talk about the ways to mitigate costs, which is we have in our brochure. We can have those conversations, but really and the wider elements of where you would find that money from, but largely and briefly is that, you know, you should be looking at, this shouldn't just be an engineering budget. This can be art and design, this can be creative media, and so on and so on. And of course, when you're bringing in a driver and you're looking at the commercial aspects of this program, you should be able to mitigate. And I'm not saying that in year one it will be a cost zero, but you should certainly be able to bring that balance down into the green, because you are cross-pollinating this program between different departments, shared budget. You're bringing in partnerships that the college may already have, or new partnerships, and you're certainly offsetting some of those costs by having a customer, you know, a driver that's paying you for the privilege to go motor racing, and hence this really is a professional racing team, and eventually, God forbid, you actually make a profit from going motor racing.
You make an interesting point there, because the Student Motorsport competition has always been marketed as a project for the whole college, the whole institution, not just for the engineering and automotive department. How would you suggest that colleges plan for this holistic approach to their competition entry?
Well, again, and not to throw a spanner in the works, no pun intended, but we've got to be open and honest about this. When I taught motor racing at the College of West Anglia, I had a wonderful time, and we did a similar approach to this, whereby we taught the students through the IMI BTEC courses, and we went motor racing back then in mini challenge largely, but we had a customer and we had commercial partners, and we wanted to introduce different departments. But one of the, I said barriers, but one of the things in education is that body shops doing that, motor vehicles doing that, and motorsports doing this, and that's how we like things. I think one of my aims for Student Motorsport, and you'll know this right from the start, aside from sharing information, was to break down barriers and have a cross-pollinatory, and as you put it, that collaborative feel within a college to strengthen relationships, courses and teaching within a college, but also cross-college to cross-college. You know, a bigger, better course in a college is going to attract students, but better courses across the country is going to strengthen and largely improve education, and not least motorsport, for what it is that we're doing. You've seen that we're attracting more teams because we've started this fraternity. We're putting education and motorsport on the map. But I think, going back to your original question, and I love a tangent, as you can tell, is that, you know, in order to spread the impact that this has on a college financially and the time commitments, is to share the load and to not be frightened that actually just because you're going to involve body shop, or you're going to involve engineering, or you're going to involve creative media, you feel like that, you know, there's too many people getting involved. I think communication and control is where it comes into. And I think, you know, we've seen it in some colleges that actually there's a real lesson here. We don't want everybody to have to learn it straight away. Is that actually spreading the load on such a diverse wide project is important for its success. So if it's going to cost and it's going to be taxing on time and effort, I think you really ought to spread the effort and therefore the value and the opportunities for the sheer number of students that get involved in this. And just as a side point, you know, people say, when we start this team, JP, what size of team should we have? Well, I say, well, as Lewis Hamilton says in Formula One, I want to thank all the people back at the factory. Well, you should be adopting that approach. I want to thank all the sheer number of students that got involved in this project, and that can be tens and tens and tens of students can be involved in micromanaging parts of this program, you know. And equally, you can also have a good number of students that come to the track. We see engineering teams at the circuit. We've seen elements of media students at the team and beyond. So we want to see that grow. But the key point here is do involve different departments at the start. Don't try to take on too much, but crucially, don't be scared by trying to have too many, or trying to have multiple departments involved, because it does require that level of commitment.
You touched on a point there about the configuration of teams at the track, and we've seen entrants configure their teams in lots of different ways. You know, some have a very strict policy of experienced team members mentoring newer team members and rotating team members around. From what you've seen and with your experience in education, how would you configure, what would you believe is the ideal way of configuring your trackside team to get the most out of the racing opportunities and the educational opportunities?
Yeah, straight away you said the beauty of this competition that we do see variety, and we don't persuade or dissuade from any way of doing it. We let teams run as they wish, and we see different levels of success, and we've learned things from those teams as well. But my way of doing things would perhaps be different than others. I think you really do need to cap the level of number of students that are working on a motor vehicle. The large amount of the activity at the circuit, of course, is working in an awning or a garage, rarely, around one vehicle. So most teams start in this competition with one vehicle. We have seen them start with two. Obviously we want to see them running two cars, because it expands the level of opportunities and the amount of students you can have working on the team. But I think if you were looking at 10 students around a race car at a weekend, that would be a good number. And then I would include around in and amongst 2 to 3 to 4 people that are dedicated to working on media. So I think really for a one-car team, whilst 15 people's too many, we're in a different environment here. What we're looking to do is, from a motorsport point of view, is prepare a racing car, is to analyse and test a racing car, and of course is to repair and prepare a racing car for a race weekend. Now, in most professional racing teams at grassroots or an entry level, as I like to refer to it as, a professional entry level, is that you can run, you know, some of the Mazdas that we see here, some of the race cars that we have with two people or even one on a car. But where the beauty of this competition is, the drivers, the partners and ourselves understand and encourage an extra level or number of students to spread that benefit. So numbers wise, 10 to 15 students on a single entry team, at least another 5 around 2 cars, but spread that between your engineering based academia and certainly your media at the track as well. And that of course can span into things like your sponsorship, your hospitality and logistics as well. So those are the numbers that I would run with. And of course it's not just about the bare bones of preparing a racing car. I think at the circuit, to answer the academia side of things, is we see teams, and certainly what I would be doing is using the activities and the processes of working at the racetrack at the weekend to form as assessment points, to form as evidence, to form as practice, to form as criteria building, whether that's for your BTEC, City and Guilds, IMI or other courses, or indeed just simply building a portfolio of experience. So you can go to your employers and say, whilst I've achieved, signed up for and finished this course, I've actually worked at the circuit on these occasions, I was in this role in media, or I was responsible for data acquisition and analysis or otherwise, and I managed to complete those set of weekends to go with my CV. So there's certainly a real practical hands-on element to these weekends, but actually from a tutor's point of view, it's really useful for putting into practice and measuring success.
Finally, if anybody's interested in entering the Student Motorsport competition, either for the remainder of this season or next year, how should they contact you, JP?
I think the preferred method would be is to go to our contact us in the top right of our menu on the website and fill out a contact form, because what that captures is name, who you are you a tutor, are you an interested driver? Of course we're interested in drivers and partnerships as well, but definitely an initial contact through the form, because what that does is it's a clear marker in my Google Mail that I see that someone is interested in speaking to us about an element of the competition, and the process there would be really is to arrange quite rapidly a face-to-face conversation over a Google Meet or in person, because I believe it's about that face-to-face. You've seen the complexity of this competition. You can't always get that down on paper, but of course we do have a brochure. We do like to have conversations. We do even have some of our partner colleges that like to not just get involved in training, but help us with the sales process and get information from our customers. But initially, as you said, contact form on the website. But of course, if you do want to use our social media channels, ping us a message. We're very receptive.
Well, thank you, JP. It's some very comprehensive answers and a lot of good information.
Thank you.
So, if you're interested in being on the Student Motorsport competition grid in the near future, follow the instructions that JP has provided, and we look forward to talking to you and hopefully seeing you on track very soon.